Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your unfiltered fit BFF. Mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who truly understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify your fitness journey so you can lose fat, regain your confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Come on, let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host, and today we have our unofficial co-host, Coach Jen. We are doing this regular series where Jen, who is our head coach at the Powerhouse Academy, comes in the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast for a conversation. You know, she is a licensed counselor. She has a lot of experience with fitness and with counseling young adults and adults alike. And what I love is that she has a very broad view and a very sympathetic approach, an empathetic approach, I would say, to understanding where people are coming from. And that's what I find that our conversations are so incredibly productive. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back again. Hi, guys.
And I'm so excited. You guys see the sound, how it's so much better. She's all like almost a professional podcaster. Like she has the headphone and like all the things. I love it.
Natalia is not taking my no technology memo lightly.
That's funny. Okay. So today the conversation is going to be around humans' obsession with novelty and how that kind of backfires on them whenever we're talking about fitness, wellness, long-term progress. Because this is something that we see a lot in the fitness, in the nutrition. It's like, oh my God, I'm so bored. And I think there are some conversations that can be had. And this is coming from someone, full disclosure, I am ADHD. Novelty is my jam. Love me good novelty. Like if there is a spark of dopamine, I'm like, ooh, I'm in. You know what I'm saying? So this is coming from a very understanding point of view because same. But I think we do have to have this conversation because otherwise people are going to keep on getting frustrated with their lack of results, not understanding why this is happening. So, Jen, why do you think that people are so boredom averse?
Well, because nowadays there is no such thing as boredom. There is so much at our fingertips to keep us entertained, per se, that boredom, it's a lost art. And boredom is something that actually is such a necessity in just growth, period, because it creates the critical thinking skills to become problem solvers, to truly sit there and navigate life's ever-changing pathway. But there's no need for it anymore. The idea of instant gratification, boredom, it's lost in the sauce. There is none of it. I mean, if you could pick up your phone and literally have something at your door within an hour's time, you're never understanding the concept of boredom. And if look at our younger generations, how often do we hear our kids say, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored. Whereas if we ever thought to even say that to our parents, we'd be like, okay, get outside. And the door would be locked behind us. Be like, good luck.
Go play with rocks.
Right. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, us as adults, we've also evolved into that same thought process, that same lifestyle to not accept the idea of quote unquote boredom as a good thing. Mm-hmm. And it's really looked at as a negative thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What are the areas within fitness and nutrition that you find there is a lot of aversion to boredom and a constant search for novelty? Like, what are the parts that we see? Because, you know, Jen is a counselor and she works in that capacity with a lot of our members, but she's also our head coach. So she's handling a lot of sometimes the feeling, oh, I'm doing the same thing. Why do you think that happens? And what are the things that you feel that people need to understand in order to get out of the mindset?
When it comes to being bored, it translates to not immediate instant gratification. It takes time to ultimately achieve what that state of boredom will create. You know, when we are, and case in point, you and I have been literally doing these same exercises for over 20 years just to maintain our physique that took us 12, 15 years to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
But people think because of, again, the next red shiny object presentation that provided some sort of insight into a new exercise routine or a new fad gym facility that opened up, that they need something different than the tried and true concepts.
Yeah.
That it's just the time too, though, the time needed.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that all of this kind of started whenever we start seeing on TV the whole idea of like quote unquote muscle confusion.
Oh,
It kind of gave force to the idea of like, oh, you need to be changing things up all the time. And one thing that I see is that, I like to use people's career normally as an example to explain the importance of repetitiveness and boredom and becoming comfortable with doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Because nobody becomes, for example, a great engineer by building one bridge.
Right.
For example, you don't wake up one day and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to build that bridge. And then you do that in like 1 second and then it kind of crumbles and you're like, I'm bored. And then you go do the same thing. It's very difficult to have a level of excellence without being in the weeds with doing the boring work. Like, I think if you're looking at professional sports, there was a story that I was listening. I think it was Michael Jordan, that Michael Jordan used to get to practice a lot earlier than everybody else just to practice shooting.
Yep.
Are you going to tell me that that is like the poster child of novelty? No,
Right.
It's the boring work that you have to do. Because here's the thing. Life is constantly changing.
Sure.
And completely forgetting about the fact that we do enjoy a little bit of novelty is unrealistic, especially the way that we live right now. So how can somebody combine the idea of the importance of boredom, but also honor the want for novelty? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, stop being so close-minded to outside opportunities to receive that novelty. Why does it have to be through every single facet of your life? Again, you reference, career, and then you speak to Michael Jordan. And, of course, my kids in boxing, I understand the same thing. They have to sit there and they have to do very traditional training, which is literally the exact same thing every single training session. So where do we find the novelty? We go outside of those practices that are going to bring us the success in certain areas of our life and implement something else somewhere else. Instead of going, okay, let's say, you have to sacrifice to achieve growth, going and eating pizza every Friday night for a little while. Okay, what can you do instead? Go axe throwing.
Yeah.
To give you that opportunity to experience newness, some new trend or fad. Why does it have to be an all or nothing in every single place of your life to where everything is constantly rotating with newness? We are to remain stable, routine, and habitualized, if you think about it, as a person. That's how we thrive. That's how we grow. So if you look at your entire life and you self-reflect on your life, are you truly in a set routine? Or are you just throwing spaghetti against the wall, hope it sticks in every place of your life because you want all of the fun newness that one day will actually have you completely crumbling and not being able to maintain any sort of quality of life and health?
I like to look at it as the boring work. It's almost like the skeleton.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a bit deep here, but I think that my analogies are going to make sense. Sometimes it just makes sense to me. So if you don't understand, I love that Jenny's here. She's going to be like, girl, pipe it down. So imagine that you have like a skeleton. I find that the skeleton is the foundational stuff, your values, the things that are important to you. For example, for some people is family. That's part of the skeleton. And then you add health. And then you had wellness, social life. And these are all the skeletons. And these, I think, become constant, which is kind of whenever you look at the human body, the skeleton is something that is a constant. What you change is what is around it. And that's where you can create novelty, because even from like an exercise standpoint, you're not going to change your bones. You're going to change the things that are on top of the bones, which is your muscle and how they look. And then you want to focus a little bit more on glutes. And that is kind of like where the novelty comes. But what I find is that a lot of people don't have those guiding principles, which would be the skeleton that are the unchangeable of life. And I think that whenever you look at all the things that kind of work, they all having guiding values. If we look at our society in the United States, from a legal standpoint, we have the Constitution.
Right.
So we have those unchangeables that they're constant. And then we have the things that are around it, but you can always measure against that value or against that constant to see where we're at. What I see is that a lot of people don't have this constant to hold themselves to, and then they keep on looking for novelty without a foundation.
Right.
Is that what you see as well?
Oh, absolutely. And it's because to build that foundation, it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And we struggle as a society to have patience. And it takes commitment. And it takes, which we are an anti-committal society because we don't have to, because we have options everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Sacrifice. It takes sacrifice to create them. Sacrifice of time, sacrifice of self. People don't want to do that because it's hard.
In talking about the sacrifice there, I almost find that it becomes a little bit of a problem of the egg or the chicken. And what I mean by that is that people are sacrificing things, but whenever they have no core values, they don't know what they're sacrificing.
Right.
Because if you don't have the core value of that your health is important to you, they just say it like, oh yeah, my health is important, but the behaviors don't match that. So is it truly a core value? So whenever we're talking about sacrifice, they start saying yes to everything, but they don't know what they're sacrificing it for.
It's never defined. They choose to not define it because they ultimately don't understand what it even translates to, right? So it's the education piece to it all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's spending time ultimately in that, again, spending time, the patience and the practice to figure out what that translates to and define it for themselves. And what they're too busy doing is looking to the outside world to have the outside world dictate it for them and tell them, well, this is what you should be doing. Circling back to, muscle confusion, it was all the rage at one point in time. So the entire world adopted the idea of muscle confusion instead of recognizing what would ultimately be the best bet for themselves as an individual, which is following the absolute invention of the wheel rather than trying to change the wheel.
Yeah, I love the analogy of the wheel. So what are the things that we see as coaches where novelty, like the obsession with novelty and the incredible aversion to any level of boredom, how do you find that is becoming detrimental to people's progress? What are the things that you're seeing? And again, listen, I want to make very clear that whenever we're saying they, we're not trying to be judgmental. This is just observations that we're making. We mess up sometimes too, but we are here in the positions as coaches and Jen as also a licensed counselor looking around at human behavior and how these behaviors are holding people back from becoming the best version of themselves. And that's what we want for every single one of you listening.
Absolutely.
To live your best life. So what are the things that you're finding, Jen, that are holding people back whenever it comes to seeing true progress and true results in their health and fitness due to the aversion to boredom?
Well, they continuously just literally and metaphorically jump around from different trend to different trend, not giving any substantial time to anything to prove itself. The anti-committal concept too. Boredom is anti-commitment. And it then ultimately translates to being scattered, never seeing the results that they're hoping for, continuously wasting money and time on different things to finally just realize, build your foundation first.
Yeah. And what I find is the idea of the expectation of a similar speed of outcome on something that is meant to be for life and expect the same outcome as they did when they did something that was very novel and very extreme. It's kind of like expecting the same level of passion and fire from a one-night stand than as to a marriage of 10, 15 years. It's a different kind of feeling. It's a different type of outcome. And, if every time that you lost that fire. I'm going to throw him against the wall and things like that. In your marriage, you'd be hopping from marriage to marriage, which kind of brings back to that people's inability to stay bored. And that is being reflected, I think, even in relationships.
Oh, 100%. Are you kidding? Oh my goodness. That is, I would say, either number one or two when it comes to the downfall of marriages. Personal perspective interjecting into this entire concept. Because yes, you're always looking for, again, the next red shiny object to sit there and light up your fire instead of actually realizing that it is the consistency and the constants, the stability is what's going to bring the overall sense of fulfillment, joy, happiness, comfort, security, everything that we thrive on as humans.
100%.
But the red shiny object syndrome kicks in even in relationships, and that's so sad.
And I think you can see that in relationships. You can see that in fitness. And another thing that we see quite often is like, oh, I'm bored of eating this food. Like, what is the hack? What is the tip? People are always looking for the shortcut and the hack and the tip. And I'm like, honestly, if you open my DMs, the amount of questions that is like, oh, do you have any hacks? And I'm like, girl, I don't. The hack is to stay consistent with something that you can see yourself doing day in and day out and having the skeleton to that. But that is not sexy. And then they go to the next 4-week program and then they crash and burn at the end of it. And they're like, oh, then now I'm going to be keto because it's that other novelty. Oh, I'm going to do some biohacking. And I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Well, that's the problem, right? Because everything that is trending, that sells everything, is all these hacks and how to get it done quick and how to add the flair and the pizzazz. And when it comes down to it, again, like you said, it's a crash and burn. And the entire cliche statement, practice makes perfect, practice of the same single things.
And from a workout perspective, because this is something that we have to overcome sometimes is, oh, but like I get bored. I need to do something different all the time. Let's forget about my background from winning the Olympia. Let's pretend that doesn't exist. I remember looking at Rogers. My husband was a professional rugby player and he did it for 15 years. Okay. If you look at Rogers' programming from when he was still actively playing, you look at it and you're like, that's it. And this is a man playing at the highest level of his sport, which is one of the hardest sports in the planet. And it was like your good old bench, Bulgarian split squats, and like all the basics. And you do that for 4 weeks. And then we look and we objectively have the data to be like, okay, you got better at this. You improved on this. We need more work on this. And then we start another one.
Right.
But yet we have people thinking that they're going to get better results and it's like the best thing ever by changing things all the time. How are you going to objectively track your progress and whether you're not getting better or not if we're constantly changing what we're tracking?
Right. It comes down to the actual facts that you are truly creating yourself. If you think about it, if they put themselves into the data itself instead of looking at it as though it's a pie graph or a chart, you are the data. You are the data piece, but there has to be one constant, which you have to be the constant to the commitment. And mind you, let's not even take into consideration the idea of discipline, because every time you do speak with people, they always say, but I'm very disciplined, but I just need different. Well, if you're disciplined, you don't need different. You don't need ever changing. You need the constants to be disciplined within.
And what I find is that people don't understand that they keep on getting stuck by constantly chasing the novelty. And not just because it is ineffective, but because it is unsustainable.
Right.
Because when life gets busy and you have this plan that is hashtag biohacking, hashtag let's get the salt that's from the top of the Himalayas with like infused with the blood of a virgin that you have to get from this store. You see what I'm saying? Whenever life gets busy and you don't have the time to go to the top of the Himalayan to get the salt infused with the blood of a virgin, then you just give up.
Right.
Because it's difficult. It's not that it's difficult, it's impractical.
Right. And it ultimately is impossible. It may be possible while you're all fancy about it. And that's the thing. That becomes, again, you get bored of that too. The salt doesn't taste as salty, if you will. 3 weeks later.
It tastes funny. Oh my God, I can't wait until I can have normal salt. And I'm like, right, that's the problem.
And that's exactly it. It's the lack of acceptance. And I'm going to say it's the lack of commitment, but it's the lack of commitment to self. And if you really do dissect it, everybody who's chasing after another thought, another process, another novelty item, why? Where are you ultimately truly unsatisfied in life if you really want to take it deep? Because you shouldn't need all of these outside elements to provide you with entertainment, if you will, if you have satisfaction in all parts of the foundation, the skeleton of your life. So where are your voids? Maybe we need to pay attention to that rather than your exercise routine. That's too more for you.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I do think that this is so powerful. So elaborate on that.
So if you were to take a person's life picture, if you will, from a high level perspective, and then you start dissecting it more and more. And if they had the constant behavior pattern to sit there and go constantly reach for something new, it's like a retail therapy concept. If you think about it, constantly have to buy in to some new concept, new idea, new product to find that temporary sense of fulfillment and or dopamine effect. It means that there are pieces in your home, your literal four walls, that need maybe attention, but you're distracting yourself from paying attention to that by these other items that are providing you with a thought process that takes you away from what needs attention.
What do you find that a lot of times this obsession with novelty in fitness and nutrition, what void do you see as the most common on something else that is trying to be overcompensated?
Oh, one of the relationships inside the home, 100%. Family relationships or personal relationships, intimate relationships, potentially the spouse or the children, major disconnects with the children. If they happen to be of ages where there is more of a relationship factor involved in it. When you have children that are in the adolescent stages, the relationship is open for discussion because they're too young to understand. But as your kids do grow into teenagers, or maybe that's exactly your void that you're trying to fill because your children are now no longer a part of your constant because they're older and they're doing their own thing. So now you're looking to fill that void with something to keep you entertained because your children are no longer there. So you became dependent on your children rather than yourself. Again, you're never your constant.
This is so powerful because I do see the value of novelty, but I think that people are letting the tail wag the dog.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that for me, I'm going to use Nathalia as an example. The constants for me are my health and fitness and wellness. I put them all kind of in the same category because same, my family and my career. These are my constant. The way that I interact with my family is going to change over the years, depending on the situation, depending on the season of life that I'm in. That is going to change, but that is going to be my guiding star. My health and fitness and wellness, it's a constant, but the way in which I navigate my health and fitness and wellness is going to have to adapt throughout the years, depending on what season of life that I'm in. Like, for example, even this week I've been pulling like 14, 15-hour work days. Why? Because it's a busy season. So maybe my workouts are not like the most elaborated or as good as I would want them to be, but to show up and modify as needed so I can still honor that constant that I have for my life.
Right.
And then you have my career, which sometimes I show up for my career more than other times, but it is a constant. It is something that I'm always going to give a lot of myself to. But it has changed. Even the way that we coach since you joined the Powerhouse Academy, it has evolved. We have added some quote unquote novelty with the changes that we have created within it to better serve our members, but it's still a constant.
Right.
So what I mean is that people are letting the tail wag the dog by completely Xing the idea of, for example, health, myself as an example, because life got busy and I like novelty all the time. So I'm not going to do anything because I'm bored. And then life got busy. And then whenever they get back to it, they're always chasing that novelty again, which then by default, it's not going to be long lasting because once again, you're letting the tail wag the dog and it just keeps on that rinse and repeat.
I had a thought while you were speaking, though, as far as I completely understand and agree naturally. The idea, though, that they cannot remain consistent within their constants through ever-changing life phases of everything around them and the evolution of is where is the trust? Where are we placing trust too? So that's where my mind started to go, is that they're constantly reaching because they're not ultimately trusting themselves to make the right official decision in certain places of life, right? Because that commitment requires trust.
Trust in self.
Yes. And why?
Why do you think that there is that lack of trust of self? And what are questions that the listeners can ask themselves to evaluate if they are trusting themselves, or if they're using, I'm busy, life is busy, all of the bullshit that we know can be used as a reason to not honor what they know should be. And again, I don't want to be in shoulds here, but I believe that health, it's something that most people want to take care of. So why do you think they lack that trust?
I would evaluate and reflect on the people they keep around them and what those people are potentially dictating for them or to them, because the company we keep is going to allow us to have that sense of self be either present or not. And that's where trust stems from.
Elaborate on that.
So it could also come down from, of course, growing up through life. And if your parents constantly said that you could do things better, continuously do things better, push you harder, never were accepting of your successes if they weren't up to a standard. So that's number one. Or number two, it could be ultimately all of the relationships you are choosing to nurture at this present time. And are they requiring and demanding certain levels or expectations of you that make you feel as though you're never living up to the ultimate standard that they have placed on you, rather than setting your own? So then you're not going to trust yourself to set your own boundaries as well within those standards. And then there's a constant disbelief, and then there's a constant reach for something else to potentially satisfy or try, or always shooting for that next star.
I feel like the obsession with a novelty and aversion to boredom is the surface level that we see. But if we're not talking about these deeper kind of layers, and that's one of the reasons why whenever I'm speaking with someone about joining the Powerhouse Academy, one of the questions that I ask is like, what was your upbringing like? Because that is going to give a lot of insight into how better help that individual. And, so we're able to know how to navigate, how to speak, how to best cater. And if we're not having these difficult conversations and giving some food for thought for people to self-analyze, they are going to keep on chasing their tail. I'm talking a lot about tail today. But they're going to keep on chasing their tail and like chasing the horizon, but nobody can ever touch the horizon. So you're constantly chasing that thing that it's an untouchable,
right?
Unreachable.
Right. But again, it's because you're constantly opening yourself up to receive information that will never provide for you the absolute answers, because you've never spent time within yourself doing that reflective piece to learn what you truly do need as an individual. You're taking what's meant for the masses, and that's why I love what we do, because we are so personalized to that extent, but using the basics of science. I'm going to say of science.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I find that people get things a bit confused. It's like whenever you're working with us, you're looking for results. And there are the most effective ways to get to those results. Is like the path of least resistance, because science be sciencing. So within the boundaries of most effective strategies, how can we maximize and simplify the process within the boundaries of what is going to give someone the best results? How can we simplify and personalize that within the boundaries to each individual? And I feel like because there is so much confusion on optimal and bells and whistles and novelty, people become confused and then come in with expectations on something that, with all due respect, they're not experts in. It's kind of like me going to my attorney and telling him exactly how to do a motion, being that I have never been, I've been to law school, but I never finished. I'm like a law curious, but I'm not a lawyer.
Right.
Another thing I'm going to add and go on a tangent, I feel like social media is giving people a false sense of expertise by tidbits of information that lack an infinite amount of context.
Right.
It's a snapshot, it's not a movie.
Right.
So any snapshot of anything is going to feel like it's going to solve all the problems. It's kind of like from a financial standpoint, it's like to be rich, you have to make more money and spend less money. That's the snapshot. But what is the movie?
Right.
And that's what I think a lot of people are missing whenever it comes to their fitness. They're taking everything at face value because I saw on social media and some idiots scream like very loudly, shirtless in a grocery store. So it must be true.
I'm just thinking on that entire thought process with exercise and everything. If you do then just dissect, spend a little time. And that's the other problem that I've noticed is that everybody's too busy rushing from one thing to the next and never slowing down enough to really learn, right? So the idea of teaching yourself, and they want all the information though, like all the information from everywhere, but they don't know what the hell to do with it, which is awesome. If you were to take like the newest trend in fitness, which might be some sort of originally boot camp style class, because that seems to be right now what's running are these boot camp style classes. But what are they doing? They're implementing ultimately the basics. You're squatting, you're lunging, you're pressing, you're pulling, you're running, you're rowing, but you're all doing it at a really fast pace. So it's making you think that you're doing something really, really effective, when in reality, you're taking the basics and throwing them all into a big jumbled pot and hoping that one thing will stick one day, without knowing ultimately what the outcome of each could be if it's done methodically, strategically, with actual tracking of the data.
I have a great analogy for that because I think it's going to land with people. I don't know if anybody here bakes. I don't.
No.
I'm not a very good cook or chef or baker or anything. But anyway, let's imagine that you're a baker. And then imagine that, like, what are the foundational, the basics of cake? You have eggs, you have flour, you have what else? Eggs, flour, butter, sugar. Imagine that it's like, okay, to bake a cake, you need eggs, butter, sugar, flour, but no measurements. You just like throw it out in the pot and then you're hoping to get a cake.
Right.
Without specificity, without what is the optimal way. Because if you add an extra egg to that, it might be that the cake is going to be a soup,
right,
or it's going to be an omelet, like a vanilla omelet. Not great. So, it's like, well, but I'm doing everything. Yes, you're doing everything, but you're getting like the idea and throwing it all together and hoping that it's the optimal way, but you're not getting the right measurements of each ingredient to make sure that one aligns with your goals.
Right.
It aligns with where you are in life.
Mm-hmm.
It aligns with where you physically are.
Your personalized recipe.
The personalized recipe. And not only the personalized recipe, the recipe that is more efficient for that specific outcome, which is because we are such individual beings, it is going to require individualized approach. And it's not even about talking about, because the workouts are going to be this Cirque du Soleil shit that you're like pressing on sideways and like, that's not what I'm talking about. It's more in the sense of being like, okay, how many times a week can you realistically commit to training?
Right.
Do you have the time to go to the gym? Oh, but I like to go to the gym. And I'm like, well, I like being rich and being in a yacht in the Mediterranean, but I'm not. So what is the next best thing?
Oh, I love that. But I just don't feel motivated to work out at home. Okay, do you have the extra 15 minutes to drive back and forth? Or do we have 20 minutes to get it done at home and you want results?
Yeah. And that is, I think, where the part of the personalization comes into mind, because like, well, I can't go to the boot camp. And I'm like, right, but your life is busy and a lot of times it's a bit unpredictable. So if you miss that window, you already feel like you suck because you missed that, because now you are not only attached to your schedule, your husband's schedule, your kids' schedule, work schedule. Now you're adding another schedule that doesn't even have to be there because that's the time that the class is. That is not even the best way for you to get to your ultimate goal.
Right.
And how do you think, Jen, because you work with teenagers and things like that, how do you think that for children watching their parents, because I feel like a lot of times we just look at ourselves for ourselves, but there are trickle-down consequences to those who are watching us, which are our kids. So this obsession with hopping from thing to thing and always changing, which then leads to dissatisfaction, how do you feel that trickles down to children? What are you seeing?
Your children are either going to adopt that same exact behavior pattern and they will never be able to ultimately commit to anything. But meanwhile, you as the parent are probably going to demand them to commit to something and be disciplined within it. So practice what you preach. Or they go completely opposite and they become almost OCD within their discipline to where when they need to adapt, they can't, and anxiety sets in and they become overwhelmed with anxiety and depression because now they feel like a failure because they can't successfully finish what they started, but they need to find that control within a discipline because all they did was see their parents go completely all over the map and not have any set standards at all. And then you have the one that falls in the middle somewhere that just kind of goes through life, la-di-da-da. But it's either one of two ways is what I've absolutely seen.
And it's interesting because whenever you go to some of these sports, they're a lot more demanding, like cheer, dance, travel hockey. For a lot of the kids, these are very demanding sports. And if you look around it, most parents don't take care of themselves. I would say the majority of them. And again, please don't see this as a judgmental comment. It is I have two eyeballs I can see.
Right.
I don't need to be some kind of scientist to look what is happening. They're having these expectations from their children to stay consistent with that sport because we're spending so much money and because we want you to succeed. Yet they can't do the same for themselves.
Right.
Like, I feel like it's almost like unfair because you're having expectations from your children that you have not been able to adopt for your own damn self.
And why? Why are you not able to? Because you're scared of that commitment to self. Listen, we understand guilt can filter in, especially mom guilt. Mom guilt is real. But then you adapt, you figure out how to make it work. That way your children do see that, okay, if mom or dad are sitting there telling me to go do it and I see them doing something comparable, if they can do it, I can do it too. And you're also boosting their confidence within the confidence that ultimately you'll be boosting within yourself too.
Mm-hmm. And we're seeing as well with some of our members that are very involved with their kids in club sports and things like that, how much better they're feeling about themselves by setting stronger boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Like even the way that they show up in calls with us, it's gaining that power back. And again, your children are in very demanding sports. Like they practice what, daily?
Every day. My son runs at least 4 to 5 miles, 7 days a week on top of his training.
So you have children who are very involved in their sports. And for you, you also had to modify the way that you train. So is it sexy? No, you train from home now because you're not able to make it to the gym and you have been a gym rat for most of your life, but you had to adapt and evolve for the season of life that is happening right now. It doesn't mean giving up, but I am 99.9% sure that your commitment to self is what is giving your children that same level of discipline and commitment to what they say that they were going to do.
Oh, 100%. I see it specifically. My son is only 14 years old. And like I said, he gets up and he chooses. It was 12 degrees here one day over the winter. And he's like, Mom, I'm going to go for my run. There was no deviation from it.
Why? You're like, why? What's happening?
But he also saw me go from one place in my fitness journey that was overly demanding and too much to then adapt. But I never gave up. I never stopped. I just adjusted to accommodate. And then also he sees the disciplines that when I do commit to certain things that are very simple, such as a daily walk in 12-degree weather as well, he's like, well, if my mom can do it, I could do it too. And he does. And I don't question him. I just, okay, do it. But I don't also push. There's no demanding push on him.
Yeah. And I think he kind of becomes that thing that you were talking about from an adult level, like people that you surround yourself with. You are that for your children.
Yeah.
It's funny because the other day, Chloe looked at me and she goes, she's nosy as shit. She's like, why do you go to the gym every day? And I'm like, because mama wants to be strong and healthy, you know, and have strong bones and strong muscles. And she was like, oh, okay. And you go every day, right? And then I was like, yeah, I go every day. She's like, yeah, I see it. Okay. You can see her wheels spinning. In her questions, I know that there is always something behind it, but she sees everything.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. And she's the one who will go to a soccer practice. And if there is some kind of drill that she didn't pick it up, you better believe she's going to be like dribbling and doing the drill either in our backyard or around my kitchen island because that's what she sees.
Right. Practice makes perfect. Practice the same thing over and over and over again until you reach the final goal.
Which brings back to that boredom. And that's something that a 7-year-old can understand. Her practices, there isn't anything that is groundbreaking every single day, but she gets better every single time because she keeps on doing the boring work. And this is a 7-year-old. And I'm pretty sure that anybody here who has kids in sports, look at your kids whenever you're in practice. There is no bells and whistles. They are doing probably the same thing day in and day out. And then there is small progressions because you can't track progress if you're constantly changing the variables.
And how do you ever expect them to actually figure out what that goal is, literally or figuratively, depending on what you're speaking about?
Okay, so now I want to also to make sure that we're honoring that people do like some level of novelty. And, we're not judging. And I think that there are ways to incorporate novelty into whatever it is that you're doing, that it doesn't become the tail wagging the dog, but the dog wagging the tail. You're still within that structure. So a few ideas that I have, and you tell me what you have, Jen. I think that the first one is very basic. Change your playlist. It adds a level of novelty to your workout. It's a very low barrier of entry. Get a new playlist. Gym clothes. Get new gym clothes.
Sneakers. I was just going to say that sneakers were my jam. I'd wear all black, but my sneakers would change.
Yeah, right. So sneakers. What is another thing that you feel like from a workout perspective can add some novelty?
Have the understanding that, yes, the basics are going to be your go-to, and that could be your 3-4 days. That doesn't mean you can't take a class or do something different on that 5th or 6th day.
I do it. I do hot yoga, and I have one day in my routine that I do a group class. I just want to be told.
Well, that too. You don't want to think. It does take that thinking element away. It also allows for a little bit of a socialization that maybe we don't have on a day-to-day basis, or it's different than what we do on a day-to-day basis, but we get it. And it just adds a different layer of maybe your heart rate increasing a different way, or it allows you to feel that competitive edge that you may not feel when you're training alone. Like, we understand, but that's not going to get you to the finish line.
That's a sprinkle. Like, that is just a sprinkle. That's not the whole cake.
That's your damn salt on your chicken that you don't know how to cook properly, or you want the hack. Okay.
So another thing is like adding classes, but understanding, being very cognizant that the classes are not the skeleton. They're not the thing that is going to get you from A to B. They're the lipstick. They're not the whole makeup.
There you go. I like it.
So adding some classes from time to time, but understanding that you have to have the basics, boring, fundamental that is done consistently, and also be a bit detached from the class. Like, for example, the class is a bit of an extra. So if you can't make it because life be lifing, you don't feel like you suck or that you're a failure because you didn't do that, because all your foundational stuff has been done.
Right. It's still present. And that's because you built your life around that.
Yeah. Another one that I think is like, maybe you don't have time to go to the gym every single day. Then maybe do half of your workout in the gym, half your workout at home, if it is something that is possible to you.
Yeah. There's lots of different variations that you can do, specifically with workout, if you will. Listen, it's going to get boring. That's the one thing. It's just really accepting that thought process. It's going to get boring at some points in time. Life does get boring. And maybe adding, instead of even music, put on a book that gets you through the idea of boredom, teaches you what boredom is and what it can positively offer for you.
There is a book that I'm reading, and I highly recommend anybody here to read it. It's called Thou Shall Prosper. It's by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. And it's a book about like prosperity, leadership, capitalism. But there are so many points on that book. And there is a quote that I'm going to read here to kind of wrap it up. The only way to prevent change from utterly dominating your life until you're driven to distraction by the absence of a fixed framework of reference is to make sure your life possesses a fixed and unchangeable framework of reference. If that doesn't completely align with everything that we just talked about, I don't know what does.
Well, think about it. Outside of the skeleton, for y'all who sit there and understand construction, are you ever going to build a foundation of a house on sand? Ever changing, ever evolving, ever eroding, right? Sand comes and goes with the waves, literally. But if you build your house on a foundation of rock, it will stand the test of time, longevity. everything that you could ever possibly build your home, your house, your physical being on.
Yeah. And novelty for the nutrition, some ideas, cook your food differently. Like, let's say you have chicken, grill the chicken, bake the chicken, air fry the chicken, different ways of doing the same thing. It's still a constant. It's still the damn chicken. Just don't fry it. You know what I'm saying? If you have fish, okay, what are different ways that you can cook the fish? How can you season? What can you put on the side that is going to give some flavor, not add like an obnoxious amount of calories? So there are ways to create novelty within the boundary of what is necessary in order to create change. But most importantly, kind of what Jen says, you need to learn how to become comfortable with boredom.
Yeah, you do. And, as far as food goes itself, don't close yourself off to the idea of having somebody help you with it either, or a meal prep company, that can be your foundation. And then you throw your little bits of seasoning all over it, or you sit there and you mix and match within that to help you achieve, or understand that there are substitutes for different. Kara, please don't kill me in saying this because you'll be the one prescribing the substitutes. But, like I know that salmon is comparable to flank steak. So there are options that you can maybe 3 days a week if you have the time. Now we have to, of course, evaluate every single person's individual schedule, again, personalized. But maybe 3 days you have salmon, 4 days you have flank steak, things like that. There are ways to work around it, but don't be closed-minded and don't be too stubborn to ask for help.
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest things that we talk with our members. We cannot find out about a problem if you don't communicate the problem. Like, I think we are probably one of the best coaching teams out there, but we have not mastered the ability to read minds.
I'm working on it.
You're getting close, I must say. All right, Jen, thank you so much for your time today. I love this conversation. This is something that I'm very passionate about, especially as someone who does love me a good novelty, but also understanding the importance of the basics. Any final thoughts that you want to leave the people with before we wrap up?
The only thing I'm going to expand on the idea of boredom and learn a way to love it, honestly, because it's going to give you back so much more. The cost to boredom will give you the benefit of success. Period. The end.
I cannot say anything after that. I love that quote. The cost of boredom is the path to success. I think that's what you said. I don't have anything else to say after that. Thank you so much, Jen. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please make sure that you send a fan mail letting us know what resonated with you. Leave reviews on the app that you're listening to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Rate the podcast because that's how you tell us that we are helping you. Okay? Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. Thank you, Jen, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram. Links are down below as well. And let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. This is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.